So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Victoria, and I'm the coordinator of the City Hall community meetings. Before we begin, I'd just like to note that live transcription is available tonight for those joining via Zoom. If you would like to see live captioning during this meeting, please select the See Captions button. Some additional housekeeping before we begin. Bathrooms are located straight outside on your left. Elevators are located outside the door to the right. Everyone is welcome to pizza and refreshments. We just ask that you enjoy them outside the auditorium. Tonight's City Hall community meeting is in a hybrid format. So in addition to those here with us at Somerville High, residents are tuned in online via Zoom. We do have a pretty packed agenda tonight. Presentations will not be taking too deep a dive into any given subject and will primarily focus on main updates. For the sake of time, we've established a process for taking questions. Once each speaker finishes their presentation, they're going to take up to 2 questions from our live audience. For those here in person, please raise your hand if you have a question, and a staff member will come over to you with the wireless microphone so you can ask your question. Presenters, please repeat all in-person questions to ensure those on Zoom can hear, because their microphone is right up here. After in-person questions, we'll be taking another 2 from those online via Zoom. For everyone on Zoom, please write any questions you have in the Q&A section on your screen. Questions will be read aloud by myself or a staff member to be answered by a presenter. Please make sure your microphones are on your devices are turned all the way up. We'll all do our best to enunciate and speak slowly and clearly. If we don't get to your question initially, don't worry. Upon completion of each presentation, staff members will be spending a few minutes each doing additional Q&A on a laptop for Zoom. While not presenting, we do have multiple other staff members here today representing different departments. That includes Somerville Fire Department, on Aging, Health and Human Services, and the Elections Department. You'll find them at tables at the front of the room. For those on Zoom, if you have questions for any of those departments, please feel free to submit it in the Q&A section, and we will make sure your question gets answered. Around 8 p.m., the community meeting will come to a close. If you have any remaining questions, we ask that you email cm@somervillema.gov. All questions will be responded to in the coming days. For those of you in person, staff will be hanging out after the meeting tonight for additional conversations. I do want to note that tonight's meeting is also being recorded, and you can find it on the City TV YouTube channel in the next day or so. Thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight and being gracious as we get experience of running a hybrid meeting. I'd now like to invite Councillor Ewan Campen to the podium.
Thank you all so much for being here. I'm Ben Ewan Campen. I am your representative on the City Council, and I also want to recognize our school committee rep is here, Sarah Phillips. And I've seen 2 of my colleagues at large, Kristen Strezzo, Councillor at Large, and Jake Wilson. And there may be some online. Forgive me if I'm overlooking you. So I am just extremely happy to be here in person again. I think the last meeting of this sort was probably 3 years ago in the basement of the old high school. So I always like to ask, raise your hand if this is your first time coming to one of these meetings. Oh, wow. Amazing. Well, thank you all. It's really, really great to be here. This is kind of a chance to hear from the administration, the good, the bad, the ugly, and to get questions answered, to kind of meet people in person. So thank you for taking the time. You're not going to be hearing from the City Council tonight, but you can reach out to me anytime by email, by phone. I'll be around here all night. So for those I haven't met, please come say hi afterwards. And now I'd like to introduce Mayor Katiana Ballantyne.
Thank you, Ben. I'm going to put this here. It's so nice to see everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. The goal of the Ward City Hall community meetings, some of you might remember them as Resistat, but they're now called City Hall community meetings, is to provide information, access, and community. And also to give you Progress for All agenda, which is a commitment to an open and inclusive government. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm really excited to be here in person with you all. I've attended these meetings over the years as a resident and as a city councilor, city council president, and now as your mayor. So many of you, as I said, have been to these before and remember them as Resistat meetings. And thank you all for those who are here for the first time. I hope tonight to provide clarity on how City Hall is and can be a resource for you. I also hope it empowers you to get involved in city processes. The goal of these meetings, as I said, is to provide information, access, and hopefully community for the people, who you don't know or who have just come here for the first time, that you get to know them. So as Councilor Ewan Campen said, he asked you to raise your hand if this is your first meeting. Thank you for that. So I thought we could get to know one another a little. Could you raise your hand if you've lived here under 2 years? If you've lived here between 2 and 5 years? If you've lived here between 5 and 10 years? Thank you, cheering squad up there. Between, what did I say? Between 5 and 10? So how about 10 and 15 years? Okay. 15 and 20? If you've lived here over 20 years? Wow, wonderful. And how about raise your hand if you've lived here your entire life? Okay. Thank you. Raise your hand if this is the first time in the Somerville High School. Okay. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, this building. Yes, thank you. Raise your hand if you've participated in the Summer Visions, which is the city's strategic plan. Okay. Raise your hand if you've participated in the Happy Survey. Raise your hand if you have a dog. If you have a cat. If you have both. Yeah. Okay, so raise your hand if you primarily commute by using public transit. If you walk. If you ride your bike. If you use your car. Okay, great. So why don't I throw it out to you all? What's a question you'd like to know about in the audience? Does anyone have one? I'm sorry?
The new parking rates that your administration brought up.
So there aren't regulations now, we're collecting information, or Brad, do you want to answer that question?
Hi there, how are you? The question was about parking rates. There are no proposed changes to parking rates at this time. The city's doing a study right now. We've had one city councilor publish an idea that is not city policy. We have a task force and community meetings of folks who are working through that. So I'll be happy to talk with you after, or anybody else who wants to talk about that issue. My name's Brad, and I'll be around all night.
So what I'd like to share also is, an understanding of Somerville and how we utilize city resources which is equally important to residents and staff. So who's here in Somerville? The city is 4 square miles. Cambridge is 45 square miles. Boston is 90 square miles. Every 3 years, approximately, 60% of our population moves out of the city. That's nearly 50,000 people every 3 years. Between 2010 and 2020, the population in Somerville rose 7% to 81,000. 50+ languages are spoken within the city of Somerville. 76% of our population is white. Somerville Public Schools is almost the reverse, with a majority minority school district and over 60% identifying as low income. Jobs in Somerville have increased by a little over 8,800 in the last decade. Vehicles on the road in Ward 3. On McGrath Highway, there are 50,000 vehicle trips per weekday. On Washington Street near Prospect Hill, there's 20,000 vehicle trips per weekday. That's Monday through Friday. On Somerville Ave near Market Basket, there's about 18,000 vehicle trips per day. Highland Ave here near the high school, there's 12,000 vehicle trips per day. And of those vehicle trips, 8 out of 10 cars on the road in Somerville do not stop at a residence or at a business. They're just passing through to go to Cambridge or Boston. Our budget has, in FY13, so 10 years ago, was just under 185 million. Our budget for FY23 is a little over 309 million. We have 17 city parks that have been renovated in the last 10 years. And on average, we plant about 350 trees to increase our urban canopy. These statistics confirm that we've been through a lot of change in the last decade, and it's up to us to act on what to do about this. There are community meetings, as we're having this evening. We're going to allow city department heads to tell their story for you, our residents, and to keep you informed. Now, access. Access is multifaceted, and we must take every opportunity to ensure it. So you're seeing the construction now. You're seeing the high-rise that is being built in Union Square, over in Assembly, over in Boynton Yards. This construction is being built after 6 years, well, I'm probably more, but 6 years of city council involvement on planning where and how that growth should happen. So in my opinion, as the mayor, you should have access to those businesses that are coming in here. So we are developing systems in place so the youth have an opportunity to connect, starting in the middle schools with these businesses that are coming in here, having paid internships, having year-round employment. We also want to make sure that residents here are also aware of the businesses and the developments that are happening here. And those developments are rooted in affordability because we are creating jobs for the people that are here, and we're also trying to create more housing. We're trying to make this a place where you can live, work, and do business here. And we're working to connect people. This past spring, I hosted a forum that connected developers and the unions. It was the first of its kind for a mayor to host such a forum, and I was building off what I did as a city councilor. In the fall, we will have developers, employers, and nonprofits meeting, and I'll continue to host these forums twice a year in the spring and in the fall to connect groups to develop relationships and develop opportunities. Residents and city staff, residents and local workforce. Many of the city's major projects include public process to get community feedback. City Hall community meetings are another vehicle for residents to meet, talk, come together on issues that matter most to them. Residents like you play a key role in the development of our strategic plan, which is known as Summer Visions 2040. The plan captures the community goals, values, and it directly identifies ongoing challenges. And the goals of this strategic plan is affordable housing, more creation of it, job creation, investing in mobility, safe ways to get around the city with mobility and infrastructure, climate change and sustainability, and more. The Summer Visions 2040 is greatly echoed in my administration's Progress for All agenda. So, first you asked, how do we create progress for all? The answer is through inclusive leadership, intentional efforts, always viewed through an equity lens. We must make space for all voices and prioritize those who often feel unheard. Progress for all begins with listening and understanding the concerns. How is it, so your question is, how have I been engaging Somerville and our community? So through meetings like this, I've held also 10 COVID listening sessions so far with various residents groups to understand their concerns and ideas. I've dedicated $1 million from the city budget for the first ever participatory budgeting working group. The Voices of Somerville survey launched in April to hear issues from residents. I've had probably a dozen meetings with the youth in our city. I've attended multiple city events, talking to residents, whether it's summer streets or ribbon cuttings or parades. So what am I hearing? I'm hearing about affordability. I'm hearing that the housing and the living costs are high. The COVID impacts, that financial recovery is difficult. Health and safety and food access is really important. I'm hearing about social justice issues. I'm hearing about the environment and global warming and trying to do everything that we can to have a sustainable community. I've been hearing about transportation. I've been hearing a lot about city infrastructure, about our school buildings, about our city buildings, about the street surfaces. And I've been hearing about quality of life, like rodent control and public safety. My administration and city staff have taken concrete steps to address multiple concerns citywide. We have free breakfast and lunch for all Somerville Public School students. In the COVID recovery for food security and access, we have a Somerville Food Security Coalition, the Somerville Mobile Market, Farmers Markets, and I believe right now we have one left. We have a citywide $15 SNAP and PEBT match program at the Somerville Farmers Market. We have Tab to Health programs to provide free rides to grocery stores, food pantries, farmers markets, and medical appointments. Economic Development has awarded grants to small businesses. We have free rapid tests. If you didn't see them, please pick them up on your way out, and K95 masks available at City Hall and all the libraries. We have flex funds for rental assistance. In regards to social progress, we've staffed our Racial and Social Justice Department most recently. Our Summer Viva Office of Immigrant Affairs has expanded now to 6 languages, offered for interpretation and translation. That's Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian Creole, Nepali, Chinese Mandarin, and Chinese Cantonese. We have a historic increase of $8.4 million in funds into the Somerville public school budget. That's a 10% increase in their budget. There's no other municipality in the state that has done that. Thank you. You know, what does that mean in concrete numbers? That means there's 10 additional mental health staff at all levels at the high school for youth, whether it's behavioral therapists, social workers, redirect counselors, and more. In affordable housing, we added $8.5 million to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for land acquisition. We have at Clarendon Hill Public Housing a district infrastructure financing. It just gives us the ability to build more affordable housing there, and that's almost 300 units. Affordable housing, we've added nearly 86 units through some form of inclusionary zoning and through the Community Land Trust. So where are we headed? We're reimagining policing and public safety. We're starting with a public safety survey set to launch. And Denise Molina Capers, our Director of Racial and Social Justice, will talk more about that. We're also looking to fill positions. So if you can look on the city's website, but we are looking for an LGBTQ plus position to be filled, a youth services director, a health deputy director, a green clean coordinator, a chief administrative officer. A chief administrative officer is in the for-profit and nonprofit world, you'd call that a chief operating officer. If you have a concern that's not mentioned here tonight, we are here tonight and beyond to always talk to you. Know that we are hard at work in numerous areas and we are actively assessing all city activities. As I stated in my inaugural address, my pledge to you as mayor is that I will always have an open and honest conversation with you about issues we face and our plans to address them. The City Hall community meetings are a vehicle to do just that. Thank you for your participation as we continue to build progress for all in Somerville. Yes.
My name is Tim Carey. I've been a Somerville resident for about 22 years. I was actually just recently, up until the last couple of years, the juvenile probation officer in Cambridge. Cambridge has 5 teen centers in the city of Cambridge. I know they're a larger city. They also have a really wonderful YMCA. They have a boxing club there as well. Why hasn't and is there discussion, hopefully there is, about building a teen center for the Somerville youth?
So for those of you who didn't hear, the question is, will Somerville have a teen center? Thank you for the question. I committed to creating and building a teen center. We are in the process of organizing that. We're not ready to release any information, but I agree with you. I've lived in Somerville 28 years. I think 25 of those years I've always heard about Somerville building or needing a teen center. We're going to make it happen. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jed Schwartz. I've been here in Somerville for over 20 years. But I'm getting my electricity from something called Clean Energy, which is a solar park or something outside that pipes it into my condo. They were charging me up until this year 12 cents a kilowatt hour. As of last month or so, it's going up to 25 cents a kilowatt hour. I'm curious to know whether anybody knows whether this is this is an across the board increase in solar power cost, or whether I should look to switch to a different provider.
So the question is about providers of solar energy cost. So what I would ask is, I don't know the specific answer to that, and Christine is not here. Oh.
Hi.
Yeah, can you use the mic? Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Emily Sullivan. I'm the Climate Change Program Manager in the Office of Sustainability and Environment. We're about to present on some information about this, but I'm happy to talk to you after. It depends on, we have a community choice electricity program, CCE, and so that's a program where you can participate in the city coordinated electricity purchasing, but I can't tell from your question whether or not you have on-site renewable energy on your apartment building.
No, it's not on site.
Okay.
It's coming in through Eversource.
Okay, how about we connect after
Yeah, sure.
and we can get into specifics. Okay. I think I am.
Yeah, okay.
This was a perfect segue.
segue.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, and I will pass it on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that better? Okay. Hi, everyone. Like I said, my name is Emily. I work for the Office of Sustainability and Environment. Thanks for joining us tonight. Tonight, I'm going to share program updates on 3 different programs that are managed by OSE, the Office of Sustainability and Environment. So OSE works to improve the environmental performance of the city government and the community. OSE implements different programs, projects, and policies to reduce energy usage and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to minimize environmental impacts and waste, to adapt to climate change, and then to foster equity in the community. OSE is a growing department, and there are currently 5 staff members. So recently, and this kind of relates to the question that was just asked, recently OSE renewed the city's CCE contract. CCE is Community Choice Electricity. It's a program. It's the city's bulk purchasing electricity program. The city combines consumer power to purchase reliable, competitive, and clean energy. The recent contract renewal doubled the amount of renewable energy in the CCE program. And the CCE program uses energy that is regionally produced and therefore supports regional clean energy projects and jobs. So if folks are interested in joining the CCE program or learning more tonight, I have more information and you can come talk to me after. But there are a few important notes to make just about the CCE program. The first is that there are 3 different levels of varying renewable energy percentages that community members can select from. If folks want to change their level or even opt out of the program, they can do so at any point in time without any penalty. Folks who work for the CCE program will never directly reach out to you either via phone or in person unless it's explicitly requested by you. And then folks who rent, so renters who pay their electric bill, are eligible to participate in the CCE program, and they don't need approval from their landlord, so they can just sign up to participate. The CCE program is a really great way to make an impactful climate action pledge. It's pretty easy to sign up, and again, I'm happy to share with folks after this if they're interested in signing up. But there are a couple other ways that you can participate in climate action or get involved if you're interested. Another way for folks to get involved is the Climate Ambassadors program. So Somerville has been doing this for a couple of years now. And so through the Climate Ambassadors program, residents form a group and learn more about the city's environmental initiatives. They talk to former ambassadors, and they complete a capstone project that can become a city program. So it's a great way to become civically engaged or more civically engaged, and to have or make an impact on different climate and environmental policies in the city. So the 2023 Ambassadors Program will start in the beginning of 2023, and it will go through June of 2023. If folks are interested, I have a sign-up sheet that you can sign up tonight, or there's an online form that you can fill out to give us your contact information. A big focus of the 2023 Ambassadors Program will be the Somerville Climate Forward update. Somerville Climate Forward is the city's climate action plan. It's the plan that outlines goals and actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to enhance resiliency to extreme weather events that are made worse by climate change. Somerville Climate Forward was originally published in 2018, and so this update process will give community members and residents an opportunity to work with the city to identify new areas to focus on or heightened priorities that the city can embark on for the next 10 years of climate action. And so if you're interested in learning more about the ambassadors, CCE, or Somerville Climate Forward, I do recommend that you sign up for OSC's monthly newsletter. It's called Sustainaville. You can find it online, or I can take down your information here tonight. But it's a great way to stay up to date on most recent programs and initiatives through OSE. So that wraps it up for the sustainability and environment portion of tonight. I'd be happy to answer a few questions if anyone has any questions. But as it's been stated, staff will be here after the presentation to answer questions too. Thank you. So up next, it's Fred. There we go. Thank you.
Wanted to stay here in case there were any questions. Good evening, everybody. I'm Fred Berman. I'm with the Office of Housing Stability. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for your interest and for coming out. First, I want to distinguish the Housing Division from the Office of Housing Stability because it's confusing. The Housing Division is the division of the Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development, which administers the inclusionary housing program, which is what the city's requirement that developers make 20% of their housing affordable. They also administer a rehab program, a lead program, which is now part of the rehab program. They work with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which gives money for developers who are creating affordable housing, and they coordinate our participation in the state's Continuum of Care program, which addresses homelessness in the state. So housing stability is the people end of housing. What we do is our goal is to try to prevent displacement, involuntary displacement, and to do whatever we can for people who, notwithstanding those efforts, do need to move, to try to help them end up in a place that is housed and is decent housing, as close to Somerville or in Somerville whenever possible. So that's our primary focus. We also have a policy focus of trying to create programs and policies that will promote housing stability. So I want to tell you a little bit about, first of all, I think I should say thank you to all of the residents of the city and the voters who made housing stability a priority. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't exist. And housing stability continues to be a high priority for this administration and, of course, for people who are constantly facing rent increases and other increased costs. One of the statistics that blows my mind is that pre-pandemic, 69% of housing transactions were in cash. That means that there were and there are a lot of either corporate buyers or or other investors who are purchasing property on a regular basis, and there's constant property turnover, which means that mortgages go up because every time you buy a property and you refinance it, the mortgage goes up, which means that if there are tenants in the building, rents have to increase. And this is a constant phenomenon. It's why we get so many requests for assistance. Over the past 9+ months, we've gotten about 1,200 requests for assistance. Many of them are around accessing rental assistance. And during the pandemic, the state and federal government released a lot of funding for rental assistance. And the city, through some of its American Recovery Program assistance program, the ARPA money, has also made considerable funds available for rental assistance. We have, since the pandemic, leveraged about $4.6 million of rental assistance, both for people who've fallen behind in their rents, and also for people who need to move and need the startup costs. You know, if you're paying $1,500, $2,000, nobody pays $1,500 anymore for a one-bedroom apartment, of course. If you're paying $2,000 for an apartment, then you have to put up first, last security, and maybe a broker's fee. You have to have $8,000, which most people who are looking for rentals don't have in their checking accounts. So we try to help folks who need that kind of help. So one of the things that Mayor Ballantyne mentioned is flexible funding. Now, a lot of the federal programs and the state programs have become more and more demanding in terms of requirements, whether it's about income, whether it's about the quality of the housing, the housing standards, whether it's about immigration status. So we wanted to create some kind of flexible funding that would not only, for example, deal with rental assistance in some cases, but also recognize that people may need some other things taken care of in order to be able to maintain their housing, maintain their employment, et cetera. So our flexible funding mostly is for rental assistance, but also covers things like if somebody needs furniture, if somebody needs moving assistance, if somebody needs some packing assistance in order to move, just things that the federal government might not cover, the state government might not cover. So in addition to one of the things that we've also done is we partner with the Housing Authority on a number of initiatives, and one of them is called the Summer VIP, Voucher Incentive Program. Now, during the pandemic, there were many more vouchers that were given out, but unfortunately, people couldn't find rents to use that were within that Housing Authority's guidelines to use those vouchers, or maybe they didn't have good credit, and landlords, even though somebody came in with a voucher, which guarantees the majority of the rent will be paid by the Housing Authority, people were rejected for housing because they didn't have good credit, and so, or they were temporarily unemployed or whatever. So we created something called the Summer VIP program, Voucher Incentive Program, to pay landlords or brokers an incentive payment to get them to keep people in Somerville. It was a really high priority. There are all kinds of stereotypes about who has vouchers, and in fact, there are many, many working people who have vouchers. They're not the poorest of the poor. They're not people who don't have responsible jobs. They're simply people who can't afford $1,800, $2,000, $2,500, $3,000 for apartments. Anyway, so we work with people. We have case managers who are bicultural, bilingual, Spanish speaking, Brazilian Portuguese speaking, and Hindi speaking, to help people access rental assistance, help people do a housing search, apply for public and subsidized housing. There is public and subsidized housing. Sometimes people have to move out of the city. We try very hard to make that not happen. But we do have a staff of four case managers. We have 4 rental assistants. part-time staff, temporary staff who have done the bulk of the work around helping people access rental assistance. And we've also created laws, programs and laws to, we haven't created the laws, but we've worked with the City Council to draft the laws around, for example, something called the Housing Stability Notification Act, which ensures that when landlords prepare to evict somebody, they have, the tenant has information about their rights and resources where they can get help to prevent eviction. We try to work with landlords and tenants to resolve disputes. We certainly try to address, prevent evictions that are due to rent arrears. Those are the easiest kinds of situations to resolve. And we also work on other issues around housing conditions, et cetera. And we do work with our state legislative delegation, we've passed a couple of home rule petitions around a transfer fee to try to increase funding for affordable housing development, a tenant right to purchase, which your city councilor was very instrumental in working on and drafting. And we're working on eviction ceiling legislation with a statewide coalition. We're working on right to counsel legislation to make sure that tenants are adequately represented in court. The statistics that people throw out about how imbalanced the playing field is, that typically 80 to 90% of landlords are represented in court by a landlord, and something on the order of 10 to 20% of tenants are represented. It's lower than that, but it's been typically, but it's been higher now because of all of the assistance that happened during the pandemic. And clearly, when you're not represented in court, you're much more vulnerable to eviction, and oftentimes people don't even realize that they can advocate to at least delay eviction, if not prevent it, by obtaining resources. So anyway, there are a lot of, I guess I'll finish up by saying that we have a contract with Cambridge and Somerville Legal Services and De Novo, another legal services office, to help with eviction prevention. We have contracts with the Somerville Homeless Coalition and with Community Action Agency of Somerville to administer rental assistance funds. We have a contract with CAS, Community Action Agency, to help with supplement our housing search services. And we have a contract with Community Action Agency also for tenant outreach, education, and organizing to help tenants in buildings that have been sold to work together to try to advocate with the new landlords to protect their tenancies and the affordability. I could talk too much longer, so I'm going to stop and see if there are any questions. And I'm also going to stick around at the end.
Should I wait for a mic? I can talk real loud.
I'm going to start with just a clarifying statement, and then I'll direct a question to Katiana Ballantyne. So when you say you are advocating for legislation for rent stabilization, you mean to allow individual municipalities to implement, to have ordinances and laws in their communities to allow rent stabilization, correct?
That's correct, because state law since 1994, when there was a referendum to end rent control, prohibited cities and towns from interfering with the landlord-tenant relationship. And so we either need a home rule petition to do that, or we need a state law and allowing cities and towns to work on that.
Well, I strongly support us being able to do that. And my question for you, Katiana, is if the state allows municipalities to pass rent stabilization, which is of course a form of rent control, will you as mayor support an ordinance here in Somerville to implement rent stabilization?
Thank you for the question. I did as a city councilor, and I would as mayor.
can't, oh, I'm sorry. You're in the light.
Thanks. My name is Derek. I guess I don't have to specify I live in Ward 3. Everyone lives in Ward 3. That's nice. Can you explain any of the background of the decisions, if the city had any role in the decision making for ending the CARES fund that was administered by CAS?
I can't speak to the, I don't know that the city had any role in ending it, so I plead ignorance, sorry.
Yeah. So we've given CAS right now is administering about $4 million in various programs. It's not called, actually, I'm not sure that it's called CARES, but there's something along those lines that we have just been evaluating through ARPA funds. But right now, as a nonprofit, they're the largest ones, and they're administering $4 million.
They have, the city awarded $1 million in what's called Flex ARPA funds, which is half of which is being administered by the Homeless Coalition, half of which is being administered by CAS. In addition, CAS and the Homeless Coalition were administering emergency solutions grants and community development block grants, all of which funded rental assistance and still have some residual funds, different amounts in different agencies. As well, both agencies also administered Community Preservation Act and Affordable Housing Trust funds. So they have a variety of different funds, which each have different rules, regulations, and use guidelines. And that's what we try to, they try to use them as effectively as possible.
Sorry, just briefly, the reason I asked is because I think I recently went to donate towards like a rent relief fund and learned that that fund is gone and don't know of an alternative. So if there is an alternative way for people to contribute towards like rent support as a charity, it would help to promote that in some way.
The Welcome Project, which is based at Mystic Housing, still maintains its own independent fund to help primarily immigrants and low-income immigrant communities or former immigrant communities. And I think Mama's is still administering, I don't know if administering is the right word, but they still help people financially as well as other ways materially. Should I do this?
We can do one more question.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Eileen, lifelong resident in a 311 customer service way. My question is this, as part of the flexible funding, is there going to be any help for heat for people this winter? We're already getting calls for heat assistance.
So, sure, I'm sorry, I should have been repeating questions. The question was, is there going to be any assistance with heat? So right now, we are able to, when people are faced with shutoff, we are able to apply for, use funds for that. We also expect within a few weeks for the low-income heating and energy assistance program, LIHEAP, which is administered by the Cambridge Department of Human Services for both Somerville and Cambridge, to go into effect, and that's through presumably March, middle of it, maybe early April, and they don't have those stipulations about facing shutoff. You basically can apply for assistance up front, and there's an allocation that's available depending on income that is reasonably good for people who are using electric or gas, and not so good for not enough really for people who heat with oil. Although that's a decreasing number of households. Clearly, the price of gas is going up, natural gas. So there are going to be some challenges. In addition, that we partner with the Department of Health and Human Services which helps out with utility assistance. They also, both the HHS and the Cambridge Department of Human Services programs can work with the utility companies to help people get onto payment plans, and if you stay on a payment plan for a year, they'll actually forgive some of what you owe if you're behind. There are discounted rates for people who are eligible for public benefits like SNAP or Mass Health or whatever. So people who are facing high energy bills and are low income, as demonstrated by participating in other public benefits programs, can get discounted rates. And we will work with folks too, but typically we're focused on the rental assistance rather than utilities. But when we can combine the two, we definitely do. And I'm happy to answer more questions. And I'll say that my boss would not forgive me if I didn't say that we have the strongest condo conversion ordinance in the state.
Good evening, everybody. Nice job, Fred. Thanks so much. Hi, my name is Brad Ross, and I'm a Somerville resident, and I serve the city as Director of Mobility in Mayor Ballantyne's office.
And I'm Brian Polstwaite, Director of Engineering in the Infrastructure and Asset Management Department.
So Brian and I are going to give about a 5-minute discussion of some of the big infrastructure, mobility, and street safety issues that our teams work on together. We'll handle a couple of questions, and we'll stick around till the end of the program. We have so many incredible departments tonight, so we are going to try to be respectful of folks' time. So Victoria, give us the hook, because just like Fred, I hope you folks get a sense of the passion, of the curiosity, of the commitment to public service from folks like Mayor Katiana, Councilor Ben, Fred, Brian, myself, all of us. We work in honorable jobs. Eileen, you're a 311 operator. This is an honorable piece of public service, and I hope you folks take pride in our community. Like I said, I'm a resident, Brian's a resident. Both of our kids go to our incredible public school system here, and goodness willing, they'll be riding the green line to this incredible public high school that we all helped build together a decade from now. So for our first little slide, please, Nick. Guess what? It's happening. We did it. This is no accident, folks. There are only 1 or 2 or 3 rail transit extensions in America in any given 5-year period, and one of them's right here in Somerville. And it's because folks like you and your neighbors and your predecessors never took no for an answer. Wig Zamor, did I see you here? Wig, Ward 3 activist. Wig, how long have you been working on this? 30 years? 25 years?
Yeah, just about.
And when I came here 15 years ago, you started teaching me and mentoring me and passing that torch. And together, we dared the Commonwealth to not build the Green Line extension. Mayor, that's where you and I first met at a community meeting, demanding that the Commonwealth fulfill its commitments under the Big Dig legal settlement long ago and deliver light rail service to the heart of our community. So the good news is happening. Thank you particularly to Ward 3 residents who have dealt with so many construction impacts these last 5 years. It's been hard, and we acknowledge that, and we thank you. So when are we going to hop on the trains? Thanksgiving at the latest, hopefully a little bit earlier in November. Revenue service will be all at once. College Avenue, Tufts, and Medford, in my neighborhood in far western Somerville. Ball Square, Magoon Square, Gilman Square on the edge of Ward 3. East Somerville Station, that kind of main line from Leechmere to the far western portions of Somerville. It will not open in batches. It will all open at once. And again, so many of us are going to have so many more choices to get to the grocery, to get to our friend's house, to get to the faith community, to get to youth sports, and not necessarily be riding buses or driving around or walking long distances. So hang in there. We're just about there. And thanks for everything that you've dealt with. Second thing that Ryan and I want to speak about is something that our teams have been working on in partnership, and it's the community path. And again, I hope that folks don't take this stuff for granted. Long ago, there was just a dream in the eyes of local activists to say, you know what, we already own all the land for the commuter rail. Why don't we build the light rail and a shared walking and biking path? And the powers that be on Beacon Hill and elsewhere are like,
No way, too hard. Why would we do that? And because of the stick-to-itiveness of this community, we figured out a way to do it. And so it's under construction. It is being built by this contractor as part of this contract. It'll open just a month or two after the Green Line itself. So picture in your mind January 1st. It's kind of a crummy time of year to be opening a community path, but gosh, it's better than losing the whole thing. And we almost lost it so many times. We all had to, work hard and persevere during those moments of awful budget cuts. We are using this ward-based community meeting cycle to educate folks that just because you feel like you've got a bunch of elbow room out near Cedar Street or Willow Avenue and Davis Square, the community path in our eastern and central neighborhoods is going to feel a little different. It's narrower, it's tighter, there are fences, there's noise. We should still be proud of it, but we just don't want folks being disappointed when they finally get a chance to go walk their dog or let their kiddo on a Strider bike or whatever they're doing and say, wow, this is kind of narrow. Wow, this is really interesting. Wow, how are we going to plow snow from this thing? We need to take our hats off to our operations professionals in our water and sewer group who's going to be unclogging drainage manholes. Brian's been working on that for a long time. For our DPW professionals who will be plowing the snow, changing light bulbs on the path. Our first responders who will be responding to emergency calls and medical calls. There's going to be a learning curve, folks. Please give us the grace, give us the patience to figure this stuff out. It's 3 miles of new rail trail. It's like 5 acres of new public space along the rail lines. It's going to take us a little time to kind of figure all these details out. But again, I hope a takeaway is we did it, and we should be proud of it, and most communities could never pull this off. Brian, anything to add?
No, you covered it. One of the key things is that the city was responsible for a handful of crossings along the corridor, and go to the next slide. Just one slide. So we have been doing some work in the Ward 3 neighborhood, in part to work on some of the crossings. Namely here, the city was responsible for the School Street crossing. I don't know why GLX gave us the very hardest crossing to do. It's not my favorite crossing in the world, but it will work. And we did get it done before the Green Line opened and the community path opened. So we are proud about that. In addition, in this past year, we've been working on putting speed humps through the neighborhood. Somebody couple last week asked why they're so low. We asked the same thing, and our contractor is going to be rectifying that for us. And then we also put in a new crosswalk over at the high school and moved the bus stop so that they will work better together to help our students who are coming in on the 88 bus to school in the morning. But our streets construction projects isn't the biggest thing in Ward 3 right now. I'm sure most of you are perfectly aware that our Spring Hill construction project is the biggest thing that we're doing here, and we'll be doing it for a couple more years. But the key thing is next week, 2 weeks, a month, November 9th. We have a community meeting to give you all an update of where the project stands, what our work over the winter is going to look like, and what we should expect to be seeing over the next few months to a year as we proceed with this project. You'll find there's a theme. November is a popular month around here. So we also have another thing coming out in November, and that is our stormwater management plan. Oh, man. I totally messed up that transition. Oh, good save. So we have a stormwater master plan that we just finished, and we're going to be pushing out to the community next month. The Spring Hill sewer separation program was kind of a prelude project to this, but this master plan covers the entire city and gives us a roadmap of how to improve sewer separation and stormwater and flooding management throughout the city. And that's going to be issued on November. Immediately following that, we're moving right into our CSO plan. Who here knows what a CSO is? Oh, I feel sorry for you all. So now I'm going to share it for the rest of you. A CSO is a combined sewer overflow. We have a combined sewer system in the city, and we're working on removing and reducing the amount of combined sewer overflows we contribute to the Mystic and the Alewife River. And this plan is going to follow on the Stormwater Master Plan, coordinate with it, and help us figure out how to reduce and hopefully someday eliminate our combined sewer overflows into our natural rivers. Now we can go back to lead. Thank you, Savior. So we also have a lead program, continuing on our utilities theme. And for the past 3 years, we have been working to reduce and remove the lead services to individual properties' homes. And we have removed actually over 150 lead services over the past 2 years. We're looking to do 100 more next year, but we need your help. If you think or suspect or even don't suspect that you have a lead service, please check our website to find out whether you are on our list or not. If you are, contact us. If the project manager doesn't reach out to you, our construction liaison, Jesse Moose, will talk to you. We'll get you on the list. This is a no-charge removal of a lead service line that could potentially be going to your house. I think that's it. Do I have one more after that? No, I'm good. Thank you so very much. I'm happy to answer questions. And of course, as Brad said, we'll be around afterwards.
Michael, please.
When are they gonna open up School Street?
They are paving School Street tomorrow and Thursday, so the opening of School Street is imminent. I would count it in weeks, maybe days, but that would be a lot of days.
Is there going to be a ribbon cutting?
Maybe a chain link fence cutting.
Yes, please, here in the front.
Good evening. My name is Jim Cassidy. I'm a resident of Avon Street. I will say we have lived the terror of this whole sewer separation. It has been ridiculous. Every day between the main sanitary sewer system to the storm drain, now the water mains, Avon Street's going through it. It's a mess. I see Summer Street. Trying to travel the neighborhood is ridiculous. I understand we need to go through this. I mean, you talk about the lead lines. I mean, you folks, when you're installing new water mains, putting supplies off the water main to the sidewalk, should be able to tell what's on the other side of that sidewalk caulk if there is going to be issues there. So you folks should be doing that. It shouldn't be neighbors going into their basements and wondering, do they have, because I know there's a lot of elderly, there's a lot of folks in the area that don't know that. I have worked in government my whole life also. I've worked in local as well as state government. And, it is a shame. We have to live this, and what really bothers me as a resident of Avon Street is our elected officials we don't even see them. I'm sorry. You know what? A visit from a city councilor or the Madam Mayor once in a while to the neighbors of Avon Street and all the surrounding streets to say, how are things going? What can we do? Is there anything we can do to help you folks? We don't see it, and it's a shame. And that's really what I would like to say, and I would like to see more people from the city out there visiting and checking on the neighbors that are living through this nightmare of this construction. I understand it needs to happen, but we would like a little support from the city around the city. Thank you.
Jim, thanks very much, Jim. So Brian's a subject expert, but I also want to point out Jesse Moose, who's one of our amazing staff, who's walking the block, who's constantly talking with residents, with contractors, with business owners on this project, and Jesse, like 24 other projects, right? So can we make sure that you folks are connected if you're not already? And so, as we said at the top, we're going to wind down now just to get to the next departments. Thank you, Ward 3. You have dealt with so much, whether it's the sewer separation project that arguably we could have dealt with 2 generations ago as a community. I want folks to remember in this moment of the bipartisan infrastructure law, it's been a long time since our society tried to accomplish things that in Somerville are a little bit natural to us: building transit, renewing sewers, achieving environmental goals like cleaning up Boston Harbor. I'm sorry that we're making up for perhaps arguably wasted time, and that we feel that pain. But I also want folks to know that we are hiring more and more people every day so that we have good communication channels, respect for abutters, whether it's bright lights, whether it's noise, whether it's disruptions. And Brian, your team has grown by like 7 or 8 people in the last couple of years. Mine has grown by 3 or 4 in the last couple of years. And we know that that's just the tip of the iceberg. This community has a vision, and it has expectations of excellence. And we need to continue to grow government to meet your expectations. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My teachers always said I didn't need an introduction because I was loud enough, so. Denise Molina Capers. I am the Director of the Racial and Social Justice Department for the City of Somerville. It is very nice to be here with all of you tonight. So the Department of Racial and Social Justice leads the City of Somerville's equity efforts and collaborates with city departments, constituents, and stakeholders to eliminate the institutional and structural systems that create racial inequities, social disparities, and other injustices. As you know us today, our priorities include certain initiatives that we have been hyper-focused on. As of one of those initiatives is obviously to build out the department, and we were established in 2021, and we have continued to build the department's capacity. We have recently hired and welcomed new staff members, the RSJ coordinator, Amanda Najim Williams, our community engagement specialist, Leonor Galindo, who is here in the center, and I'll introduce you further to her later on, and our public information officer, Hawken Brooks. So most recently, we partnered with several graduate students from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and we recruited youth from the city to help us conduct a short, critical, participatory action research project. This project involved our youth deciding and talking and researching ways in which the city can have, under the RSJ department, a youth cabinet that will allow the youth of the city to be an active part of decisions that are being made in the city. And most importantly, our reimagining policing and public safety, getting information from our youth on their experiences and their perceptions and their thoughts. And so the youth have almost finalized their study, and they will be presenting the results of this study in November, and we are very excited for them. We have recently had, on September 20th and September 22nd, we hosted what is known as PFA, Psychological First Aid, in partnership with the Office of Immigrant Affairs and the Department of Health and Human Services. We hosted 2 psychological first aid training sessions for city staff, frontline workers, community leaders. And when I say community leaders, I mean your neighbor down the hall that you trust and you talk with, and you get resources about things that are happening in the city or where you can go and access something. Anyone who supports Somerville residents and workers. The trainings were held via Zoom and facilitated by Mindwise Innovations, a service of Riverside Community Care. We had 130 individuals pre-register for the 4-hour training, and over 90 participated in 2 days. Next week, we will be hosting the second half of that, which will allow those persons who received the first session of training to now practice what they learned in the first session. And we hope to continue providing these kinds of developments for our community. As far as the hate and bias incidences are concerned, the community again had requested that the RSJ monitor the establishment of a system for reporting, investigating, and referring hate and bias incidences. As you know, we were approved to hire an RSJ investigator, which we will be posting the position soon. We are in the process of implementing a case management system that is known as FileBind. And with this tool, we will be able to track hate and bias incidents complaints filed with RSJ 311 and other partner areas that receive complaints from constituents. And we're able to customize FileBind to track any and all relevant information to these cases and keep in contact with those who have filed the complaints with them personally and on time and consistently. Our Reimagining Policing and Public Safety Staffing and Operations Analysis, we have completed the first phase of initial meetings and fact-finding, and we are simultaneously working on the focus groups and interviews, the data collection and analysis. The next and final phases will include recommendation development, report development, and presenting the findings to the community. Our community visioning focus groups have been ongoing since August of this year, and dates for participation will be updated on the RSJ website. Now that we also have a public information officer, we will be able to set up micro pages that will give you specific information to the specific initiatives that you're looking for and how to engage with those as well. For the community vision focus groups, you can choose to put a group together and we will work with you to make that as easy as possible, or you can come in and join a separate group as an individual. The Policing and Public Safety Perception Survey has been published in 6 different languages. It is posted online. It is also available as a hard copy. And this evening, Leo Galindo has brought some hard copies with her if you're interested in filling out the survey before you leave. We also welcome people to call us directly by request and let us know how is it best to get that survey to you to fill it out. We will be door knocking in all the wards. We will be having public meetings where you can be a walk-in for the focus groups and fill out the surveys. So there will be many opportunities for people to engage and participate in these ways to share your thoughts and perceptions. Our RSJ community ambassadors will be announced in November 2022. The ambassadors will play a critical role in the outreach, engagement, and empowering of the community of Somerville, especially our most vulnerable, who are seldom heard from. We have officially put together the committee of evaluators that will be responsible for reviewing applications submitted and helping to choose the candidates that best represent the diversity and lived experience of all the constituents and stakeholders of Somerville to help us continue doing this work. The RSJ fund was also put under the RSJ department to provide a sustainable and enduring source of funding to dismantle systemic racism and social inequality. The fund's resources will be used to support efforts of individuals, organizations, and other agencies to redress the impacts and deconstruct the underlying causes of racial and social injustice. We are currently working on putting together the application process and the pre-proposal process so that we are able to support any and everyone who is open to and has ideas about doing this kind of work. So we're making sure that we're providing language access and also just access in general, because not everyone has written a grant. Civilian oversight. The RSJ department is tasked with creating recommendations for what a civilian oversight would look like in Somerville. So the task force will be announced in November. This task force will be trained, informed, and knowledgeable about what a civilian oversight is and how it functions across different models. Their recommendations will align this knowledge and awareness with the needs of Somerville as a city and as voiced by its constituents. We decided to create this task force in order to increase transparency, public trust, and confidence in the process. This task force will bring together representations from Somerville community and experts on this subject matter to inform the decisions around civilian oversight. The commissions, the Human Rights Commissions, then the Somerville Commission for Women and the Somerville Commissions for Persons with Disabilities has 4 open spots that they are recruiting for, and we will leave those spots open until they are filled. ADA Division has completed an internal survey. The majority of the surveyed staff were in their leadership and management positions. The good thing is that they all had some working knowledge of ADA, and that it definitely, the information we received from this survey, this internal survey, will inform the professional development that will be developed and implemented on behalf of our ADA expert, Adrienne Pomeroy. Currently, she is working to provide professional development around ADA with our city fire department and our city police department. Our fire department will begin to receive training and professional development in October this month. And finally, the ADA community survey, which everyone here will hopefully receive and be able to fill out, will come out in November of 2022. And with that, I will take 2 questions and will also be available afterwards for anyone who wants to speak with me.
Thank you so much. My name is Becca Wolfson. I'm a Ward 3 resident. I have one actually very general question that doesn't need an answer, but it's more of an idea, and then a specific question for you. I have a lot of questions and ideas that wouldn't necessarily be like 311 submissions, so I would love it if there was like a survey or some way to submit questions that could then be published online or answered directly, ideas that could be submitted, something like that. So a follow-up link from the city would be great for something like that. And then specifically for you, I'm curious about the restorative justice program that the city has. There was a very well publicized plant theft that was continuing 2 summers ago, and the perpetrator was caught, was offered a restorative justice process instead of another type of prosecution. It was a white woman, and I've just been very curious. I've reached out to the council. I haven't gotten an answer, like what the demographics are of who actually accesses the restorative justice, who it's available to. Are there racial disparities, and can it be available to more people? Are all victims of crimes finding out about it?
The restorative justice program currently lives under the police department, so I'll defer specific questions on that to the chief. I will say that part of the work that the RSJ department is doing is collecting a lot of data in different areas, and part of what we are aiming to do is to create a part of our website where we call it a resource page, where you would be able to get specific data around different subject areas. So it's important to me to hear that, because if we didn't already have a plan to have that specific data available, now we can add that to the list of information that our constituents want to know about. But Chief, if you want to answer that question now, or?
Well, can you just tell her she can send Rebecca, you can, to your first comment, you can send your ideas and thoughts to CM, that's community meeting, so cm@somervillema.gov. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I was supposed to repeat the question. I didn't follow instructions. The question was, do we have any data around the restorative justice program, and specifically the demographics that are being that are in the program or taking advantage of the program, or yeah. Did I get that right? Sorry. Chief. And I know that there was one more question.
I did have another question.
At the beginning of the program, there was some budgetary information as to the Somerville budget, which had increased markedly by some 1 point something million to maybe 300 million something. My question is, can you account for where these additional funds came from, A, and B, is the Somerville budget, that is salaries of all of you wonderful people, is that available online? That's my question. And I guess it goes to the mayor, I suppose. I'm not sure.
It's all online. What was the first part? The budget and how it's being used.
So all that.
No, that wasn't the question. The question was, is it available online? And where did the additional funds come from?
So it's identified in the budget, so I can talk to you about it, but it's usually within the first 5 pages. It tells you where, in the budget book, it tells you where all the revenue is coming from. It's a combination of real estate taxes, primarily residential, commercial, fees like permitting fees, parking fees, but it's in the front of the book, or online it's in the first couple of pages.
Okay. Chief. I will hand it off to our chief.
Thank you, Denise. Welcome. My name is Charlie Femino. By way of background, I served 32 years on the Somerville Police Department before retiring in 2014. Went back into the private sector in the world of higher education, practice of law, and I returned to Somerville PD in 2020 and will be here until your new permanent chief is chosen. I tell you that because when I left and after returning, it's a very different Somerville. It's a Somerville that the needs and wants of the communities, you people, have changed dramatically. And I've seen that in the gap of time that I've left. And I work very closely with Denise, and I've been meeting with her on a weekly basis since she came to Somerville in the whole concept of reimagining public safety. There's a lot of changes that have been made. We've been working together on a weekly basis, and the best is yet to come. As she mentioned, there's a staffing and operations analysis that's due, and hopefully, as the recommendations that come out of that staffing and operations study come out, we'll be able to change the policing in Somerville so that it meets the needs of your community. Before I make comments on specific crime stats, I want to just mention a couple of concepts of interest and often topics of our conversations over the last year or so. Community policing, I'm often asked, where is our community policing? Where are the offices? The program, which initially started back in the 80s, was a model at one point for other communities, cities, and towns around our surrounding areas. Was originally 14 offices. Based on reductions through the years, it turned into a 7-person staffed unit with a sergeant. Based on our current needs now at the department, unfortunately that unit has been disbanded. The officers are reassigned to patrol division to staff the patrol vehicles. We're hoping that as that staffing analysis comes out, recommendations that come forward, we're trying our best to reestablish some type of community outreach program with the community police officers. School resource officers, again, that program has been ongoing through the years, as many of you who have been here for years know. At this point, it's been put on pause based on a school committee vote. We are currently in discussions with the school committee and the administration on bringing back some type of a school resource officer program, as well as the STEPS program, which was officers who were assigned to the grade level schools who followed the school's grade levels up through the high school. And each year those officers would visit the schools in a non-enforcement positive relationship building role. And we're going to try to bring that back at some point. A lot of people, we talk about the accreditation, the police accreditation. For those of you who know what an accreditation process is, the Somerville Police Department were originally accredited in 2019. We have to be reassessed every 3 years. I'm proud to say that in June we were reaccredited. That basically are best practices that are established by the commission, the Mass Police Accreditation Commission, and it's about 380 standards. About 250 of those standards, roughly 250 mandated, the rest are optional. Somerville is one of the largest cities in this area, in the Northeast, to be accredited. And so what does that mean? Every 3 years, the assessors come in, they spend 3 days to make sure that we're not only saying that we're doing something, but actually proceeding in practice what we say we do. Police reform, as well as you all probably know, passed in 2020, primarily meant for transparency and accountability in policing and law enforcement, well overdue. It's the most important. I mean, we could stand all night speaking about police reform, but they passed about 27 different and new reform modes for the police departments to follow in Massachusetts. I think the most important one, in my personal opinion, is that it now mandates every officer in the Commonwealth to be certified as a police officer in good standing. But more importantly, it also creates a practice and a mode for decertifying police officers. And that process occurs every 3 years. So every 3 years, based on the alphabet of where an officer's last name stands, their disciplinary files are submitted and is a review by this commission, and there's been officers already decertified or who will not get certified to be police officers in Massachusetts. And as part of that, all of those disciplinary files, as an oversight for the Commonwealth, put into a centralized database, a nationwide centralized database. And what that does is that if an officer for some reason leaves, say, Somerville PD and tries to go to another department, whether it be in the Commonwealth or elsewhere, those disciplinary files can be checked through this nationwide database. So it allows for accountability for police managers, police departments to hire only those qualified police officers that are candidates. Turning to your crime stats for the ward. Citywide, usually we give a snapshot. Citywide, crime has increased about 10% over the year and about 11% over 2 years. Again, when you talk about statistics and when you talk about percentages, it can be deceiving at times. What that amounts to, there was about 117 more incidents citywide versus the year before, and about 130 incidents over the last 2 years. But specifically in Ward 3, your ward, crime has decreased by about 2% over 1 year and about 13% or 12 incidents over 2 years. And that's basically due to decreases in property crime, car breaks, and house breaks. And there's also been a slight decrease in bike thefts. What you can do, I knew that was going to happen with me. Okay, all right. So there's two things that, we can't do this by ourselves. Obviously, the police department will do its part, but you also, as residents, should be or could be doing your part. You hear it all the time, but you'd be amazed how many times people are leaving their cars unlocked overnight. So please lock your cars. Your bikes, we find a lot of bikes being stolen with the cables being broken, cut rather, because of the pole that they're putting their bike on. So try to be wary of that. But most importantly, if you see something overnight, specifically overnight, a suspicious person, don't be afraid to call 911. Don't be afraid to put the call in just to say, hey, listen, there's somebody out there that doesn't look right, or they're roaming around in the car, looking into cars, because that's our eyes and ears when we're not there. So if you do see something, please call. We're trying to increase prevention awareness programs. You can go on to our website. There's a section of our website that talks about what you can do and what we're doing. The biggest thing is, in what's increasing and driving the increase in crime basically across this region is, believe it or not, the thefts of catalytic converters from cars. It takes about 3 to 5 minutes for someone to pull up and steal, cut out the catalytic converter. And so we do have one detective assigned to what there's a regional task force right now investigating that type of a crime that's not only here in Somerville, but that's up and down the East Coast. And we're also working closely with the Director of Racial and Social Justice in keeping a database with the hate and bias crimes and trying to investigate them more thoroughly also. So with that, I'll take 2 questions, and I'll also be here. I'm joined by Captain Jim Donovan of the Patrol Division. Many of you may have seen him. He's out and about in every ward, not just this particular ward, but I have a question over here to my right. oh, right, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Hi, my name is Anton Tutter, and I've been a resident of Somerville for 21 years, and 20 of those 21 years in Ward 3. And I have a question about traffic enforcement and what the trends are over the past 5 years or a decade or so in terms of the number of citations issued for moving vehicle violations. Because it just seems as though traffic violations have just increased and become more blatant. And I asked this question, I think it was in the last Resistat meeting before the pandemic. It might have been 2019, when Chief Fallon said that he didn't believe that citations were effective. And I just wanted to know what the department's stance is, on that now, and whether the actual citation numbers, how they've been trending. Have they been going up? Have they been going down? Thank you.
So the basic question is whether or not, based on traffic patterns and traffic enforcement, what are the trends for citations for enforcement purposes. And so I can't give you specific citation data, but I can prepare it for you, and I could do that, after this meeting. But I will say that, generally speaking, based on COVID coming into play, that the traffic motor vehicle stops and enforcement slowed down considerably, not just because of our department personnel. It was a statewide suggestion, proposal, that officers have less contact because of COVID. As we came out of the COVID years, the trend for enforcement started to pick up again. Again, I think during the last budget or the budget cycle prior to that, fiscal 21, we had some slides on that traffic enforcement, but I'd be happy to, if you want to give me your name and a contact, I can also get that information for you.
Santo Batari, live on Vinyl Ave. What can you guys do about speeding?
So the question is what we're doing about speeding. So most of our deployment, if not all of it, is data-driven. We have a crime analyst, and so if there are complaints that are lodged in a particular area, and there's particular hotspots, what I call hotspots in the city, where cars tend to speed more than not, and so with that, we have our traffic unit, both in the morning hours and in the afternoon hours, doing specific enforcement at those locations. Again, I don't have all of those locations in my mind, but they tend to be Highland Ave, Broadway, in certain sections of Broadway. Again, I can get those specific locations, but if you're calling for the request for enforcement for speeding, we will then deploy personnel in that area.
Do I call the police department?
Yeah, at the very end, if you can go one more slide. I think, yeah. So we actually just developed that first police today. If you have questions or concerns, you can put those questions or concerns into that particular email. Anonymous crime tip number is there, and community meeting slides, if you wanted a copy of tonight's slides, is there. So there is a new email that you can use for general questions, concerns, comments.
Chief, can I just quickly add to that, to your question, Santo and Anton's? Folks who are interested in an evaluation of speeding behavior in their neighborhood can email transportation@somervillema.gov. You can work through your city councilors. Ben, Kristen, and Jake Wilson, who are all here, are great on relaying those types of issues to our staff. We will go out, we will collect data. And look, folks, I think it's really important to acknowledge that the only way to prevent people from achieving unsafe speeds really is changing the built environment. It's a game of whack-a-mole when you're actually talking about enforcement. You might get 3 weeks of relief, but one of the things that we work on as engineers and as planners is speed humps, curb extensions, raised crosswalks, streets that are so naturally safe, meaning 20 miles per hour, which is the only safe speed to operate a vehicle in an urban environment, period, full stop. Only safe speed is 20. That really kind of take the reliance off that temporary benefit of enforcement. So email transportation@somervillema.gov. I cannot guarantee that we're going to build you a speed hump on your street next year. However, we will evaluate it and we will get it into the multi-year pipeline. Okay, thanks everybody.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Colin Ziegler, the Environmental Health Coordinator for the city, also known as the Rat Czar. A lot of claps. That's weird. But I also wanted to touch on another subject that's going on in the city, and that has a lot to do with the new pre-treatment regulations for fats, oils, and greases, which I'll just briefly explain and leave plenty of time for questions. So, next slide. This is my favorite line graph in the world. This tracks all of the 311 calls that I receive and 311 receives related to rodents, whether this be overgrowth, mismanagement of trash, requests to be part of the residential program, or just general reports of a rat squashed in front of your house, which is too often an occurrence. So you'll see in 2021, there's a spike in April and May. It directly correlates with two things. The first being the annual postcard that we send out to 23,000 individual residents, as well as the spikes in seasonal activity for rodents, whether that be breeding or just the warmer weather. They're out there, they're checking things out and collecting your trash. And then in 2022, we have a little bit of a later spike, again, correlating with that annual postcard. But it's really good news for the city and for all of our residents is that we've gotten that information out to everyone. We've provided resources on how to reduce food, water, and shelter, but also given everyone the opportunity to participate in our residential program, which I'm proud to say is nearly serviced 700 houses. So shout out to our inspectors who do all of that great work in providing free pest control to everyone. Next slide. But this is really the bread and butter of what I wanted to talk about tonight. Our community site visits are the most effective method for us to tackle rodents as a community. You have to really work together, neighbor to neighbor, street by street, to tackle rodent issues. We're an extremely dense city with lots of food, lots of soft soils, and lots of water resources as well. So it's basically rodent heaven, which is why it seems like such a problem. So we've conducted 27 of these site visits. Basically, this includes more than one resident at a time. This is multiple neighbors coming together, talking about the specific issues and potential causes for rodents. It's a really effective way for everyone to get an ideal vision of what's happening around them and causation. You can't put out 1 million traps, and I can't put a smart box in everyone's backyard, even though I would love to. So this is the next best thing we can do. We can be preemptive in tackling the rodent issue together. And I'm here to facilitate those conversations and provide those resources. So if you don't see your street up here, just please reach out to me. I want to talk rats with you and your community members. I really, really do, as weird as it might sound. Next slide, please. The next most exciting thing is that in partnership with DPW staff and HHS staff, inspectional services and myself, we've identified some of the key locations for green spaces, which are at a high level of reporting for rodent issues, and just general activity that we're seeing. Our DPW staff, our inspectional services staff, they're coming back to us and saying, hey, these are the parks we need to start to look at and eliminate open trash containment. So if you see your favorite park in this list, I'm very excited for you in phase 1. That contract is in hand. We're continuing to look at additional parks for phase 2. And we're looking forward to eliminating an additional food resource in the green spaces, the places we like to enjoy to walk, have picnics, and not get robbed by a group of rats. So that's it for rat talk. Now I want to move on to the next most interesting thing, which are fats, oils, and greases. So the Board of Health recently signed off on a pre-treatment regulation that was signed last year, but will be implemented next year concerning those of you associated with applying for a food license. Essentially what we need to know, how big is the fog management device that you're utilizing? Is it being pumped out? Is it being maintained? Where is it being transported? And ultimately, how much of it are you doing? Are you keeping up to date with documents? The city needs to know this because as we have more restaurant activity, as our infrastructure continues to age, we want to ensure its health, and we don't need giant grease blockages backing up into our businesses and homes. So this is just the city working towards improving the health of our infrastructure. Next slide. So if you need more information, we're working on providing a number of educational documents and recommendations on how to best manage a fog management device and implement a fog management plan as a restaurant. You can visit us at somervillema.gov/fog. Be on the lookout for those. We're working on getting those translated and making sure they're as clear as possible. I know this is something new, but I hope it's something that our current food establishments are already practicing. But happy to answer more questions about this if you want to pull me aside. So, great. That's it. Any questions? Yeah.
What about the construction that's going on? It's causing all the buildings to come up.
Yeah, that's a great question. Could we get him the mic by chance? Yeah. The question is concerning the relationship of rodents in construction. So I've been in conversation with a number of different municipalities, including our neighbors here, but also those in New Orleans, who are going through major infrastructural changes, a lot of construction, a lot of activity. The main correlation is associated with properties that have been abandoned and completely mismanaged, where rodents are currently residing, where they're burrowing, and when there's a large amount of excavation taking place, which will disperse a rodent population in the area. Now, the city requires that anyone applying for a demolition permit also treat the property and do continuous inspections and replacement of baits during that entire construction time. So we're working to get them to make them or have them do better, do more inspections and make sure that the bait's being taken. And if not, what new strategies can a demolition site implement to improve that? So yeah. Yes.
I'm wondering if you've gotten data back from the smart boxes, and if so, if you'd like to sort of give us an update.
Yeah, absolutely. Smart boxes are my second favorite thing to talk about besides food, water, and shelter. So thank you. So the Smart Box program, the pilot first phase was completed at the end of June. Oh, yes. A smart box is a device about the size of a paper shredder. It's battery operated, but also geolocated. So we're able to track rodent behavior and fluctuations in population over time and in real time. So those boxes don't use bait. They use electrocution or reverse defibrillation. Zaps the rats, keeps them in the box self-contained, where they're then taken care of by our service provider. So we've had 924 catches as of yesterday, which is fantastic news considering we only have 50 boxes placed in 4 different locations. So these locations vary greatly in the number of catches, but the data that's coming through is extremely promising. We've already started to move forward on working with some of our residential and business partners on addressing those issues on a local basis, and then figuring out ways that we can work them further into our rodent control plan. So phase 2 is going to be occurring this week, which is very exciting. Union Square and Lincoln Park will be receiving inactive boxes. So these are boxes that have caught 3 or less in the current pilot. So very exciting news. Yeah.
We can take one more in person, and then we're going to take 2 from online.
Yeah.
Hey, Rodent Czar, it's nice to meet you. I'm Ronnie. I'm a Australian immigrant to Somerville. And in Australia, we have tons of things that try to kill you. But I don't know if you guys know this, but here you have these tiny tick things, and they're hands down completely terrifying.
Yeah.
And I found one in my house in Somerville, and I hadn't been out hiking or anything. So I did lots of terrifying research with way too many pictures, and it turns out that they're mice affiliated. So I'm wondering if there is a tick prevention angle to your rodent czardom. Thank you.
Czardom, I love that. No, I'm sorry, the question was in relation to ticks, specifically mice that might carry ticks. There's nothing on my plate that currently deals with that issue, but I would encourage you to look at extermination possibilities to rid any mice in and around your property. Again, that's something I would love to discuss more afterwards and look into further. So thank you for the question.
First question, what are the main causes for rodent population increase over the past several years?
Oh, great question. So there's a question online about rodent population increases over the past couple or several years. So again, the construction issue, displacement of rodents, there's major construction in the area. They've been living in our city, but as excavation takes place, they're being displaced. And what has happened is that they've found out and adapted to more and more food resources, particularly our residential bins or a mismanaged property that provides shelter and water sources. So they've essentially burrowed themselves into our day-to-day lives rather than doing what they normally do, which is being around commercial garbage cans and much more easy and voluminous forms of trash. But we also have much more mild winters, which allows the breeding season to be extended, which, as you all know, rats breed faster than rabbits. So it's a serious increase in the amount of activity for a number of factors, but those are some big ones. Absolutely.
One more question. Yeah. Can there be any prioritization of playgrounds where there are new cans and open barrels?
Yeah, the question was in relation to prioritizing playgrounds and green spaces, which I had mentioned. We're trying to replace a lot of the open public trash receptacles with big bellies, which will be inaccessible for rodents. But we're continuing to look at our green spaces, and I'm asking for everyone's sort of on-the-ground eyes as to what they're seeing in our playgrounds. It's not always driven by those trash receptacles, but they are a big part. If you're noticing an elevated level of dumping food, or maybe there's a water resource like a dripping sprinkler that needs to be addressed, those are all things that go into helping our approach. So if you see it, just feel free to call 311 or contact me directly at the email behind me. So. One more. Oh, right here. Yes.
So I think one of the biggest problems is the improper storage of trash.
Yeah.
This is just an example. We were driving down Highland Avenue on Sunday. There's no trash pickup on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And there, in front of an apartment building, there was a whole row of trash barrels, all of them overstuffed and open, and, you know, a feast for rodents.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Sunday, so I assume that the people who issued tickets weren't working. Is there something that we can do about that?
Yeah, the question was in relation to ticketing and trash mismanagement, which I know is a very serious issue, and I deal with it on a day-to-day basis. My approach is that I work directly with property management companies or owners themselves. I make recommendations, and then I also send that information to inspectors to keep it on their radar, to issue tickets, continue monitoring. But there are shortcomings to what our inspectors can and can't do, but also their bandwidth in terms of the work they're doing. In the Ward 5 meeting, I showed a map just showing that our inspectors have visited roughly 1,300 individual properties in response to a complaint, residential visit, or trash or overgrowth issue. So they're very busy. The rodent inspectors are very strained in what they're able to do. So that is another aspect of it.
Provide more barrels to apartment buildings?
That is a big part of what I do in those discussions one-on-one with property managers and owners, is that I make recommendations as to if you have X amount of units, you need X amount of barrels, and they usually follow through. There's a lot of momentum behind these larger buildings, trying to change behaviors related to storage of waste. Some push back or some don't do anything, but that's where tickets come in handy, and we can sort of use a carrot and stick approach. But if you have a specific issue, feel free to meet with me afterwards and we can discuss.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
So that concludes our Ward 3 meeting. Thank you all for taking the time to be here with us tonight. If you're on Zoom and you have additional questions, or if you're here and would rather write in, you can contact us at cm@somervillema.gov. The meeting slides from tonight, as well as a recording, will be available online at somervillema.gov/communitymeetings with an S. City TV will also have a YouTube recording of this meeting in the coming days, and we will also post that online. So thank you, and have a great night.